right. So I'm calling to order a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Sunset Valley, Texas for Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. The time is 6 o'clock. And we'll begin with agenda item number 2, which is public comments. So if you wish to stand up and speak, please go to the podium, state your name, and go ahead and address council.
And Mr. Pearson, just make sure the mic's on. It should have a green light.
Mic is
And
now
maybe
on.
pull it down a little bit. There you go.
And now the mic is aimed at me. And I'm going to keep my mask on because I know some people were slightly frightened when I removed it last time. Anyway, let me say this to you all. This is a happy thing I'm talking about tonight because we've had some nice response from people using Merlin to do sound identification of birds as they walk around in Sunset Valley. This helps us because right now we have master birders coming here, and they're doing surveys of the bird species in Sunset Valley, and also particularly on some of the land that we've now slated for conservation, so that as conservation proceeds, we're able to see if our restoration practices are increasing bird diversity. So this is really good. Now, as a result of this, we've gotten a very outstanding master birder from Travis County Audubon Society, Robin Dennis, who's been helping us with this. I found out that while she doesn't live in Sunset Valley, she has a very strong connection here over the years, and birders often develop an area that is particularly favorable to them, that they love, and they call it their patch, and she's told me that Sunset Valley is her patch. And so she's been on here for Christmas counts and other counts. So anyway, when the people were working, they identified a Harris's sparrow. I didn't think much of this at the time, but we found out that Harris is on the list of declining species. And so she was alerted to look and see if it's currently here. And I was actually birding with her. We were out on the uplands, and we found a sparrow on the uplands. And so it's a bird that overwinters in Central Texas. So now we are one of the overwinter sites for this that's declining. And so opportunity now to inform ourselves about that. Knowledge is power. And so I think that's a very wonderful thing. Beyond that, she told me an interesting anecdotal story. She said some years ago, before some of the developments had taken place in Sunset Valley, those were very numerous, they had gone down a lot, and in the minds of some birders, Sunset Valley is a place to go at this current time, maybe, because quite a few of the species have been. But anyway, she was contacted some years ago by the Travis County Audubon Society because they had some people in from Germany who were birders, and they wanted to see Harris's sparrow. And so they called Robin, and could you tell them where they are? Robin said, yeah, I can tell where they are. They're at Sunset Valley. She told them exactly where in Sunset Valley and how to see the birds. And they came and they saw them. Now, this is before we had electronic reporting or, website stuff. And so even then, Sunset Valley has been a site of birder ecotourism internationally. Now today we have eBird, and so this information goes out internationally, nationally and internationally now, as reported by the master birders, because it's part of a large Cornell Lab of Ornithology research projects, ongoing research to know where birds are, whether they're declining or not, what habitats they have, what habitats they're using. And so we are part of that now, and I'm very, very, very proud of that, and I think that's very, very good. I said knowledge is power, and that's the case because now you see, and we also have another one. We have a field sparrow. That's the name of the field sparrow, and we saw that over on the Manley Tract. And it's a common species currently, but Cornell says it's in rapid decline. So we have another bird there. So when we manage these properties, the uplands, and manage the Manley Tract, we have this knowledge now so that we can really do some good to help preserve these species that are in trouble. Now, part of this, I think, There's, you know, we haven't known this until just recently, et cetera. And I think it might be very good, council, to recommend that we, since we're paying Mend as the restorationist and paying David Mailer, who knows a lot about restoration, to do this work, that it'd be good if maybe they coordinated on some of our mowing efforts so that we can best manage these habitats for these species and for the future. We don't know what the economic value of bird ecotourism is to Sunset Valley because we haven't really learned about it or tried to develop it yet. But I was startled to find that we'd already been on the map internationally. And I found out on the web that Austin is now ranked 9th in the nation for birding opportunities. So we have a great opportunity here, restoring prairie, one of the and having it be year-round, because Harris's sparrow is here in the winter and then is gone up to northern Canada for where it breeds. So I want to thank you all for being involved in helping to do this kind of work, and just everybody that's volunteered too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Tonight's a two-part. I like the lesson on the bird. My name's Dan Horgan. There's a message and a lot of life. So there's a religious war going on, and I'd like to pray for our Bishop Mari Emanuel, who was stabbed last night by somebody that didn't like religion or his belief. So. But there is a lesson in the bird. The bird was talked about. So let's talk about the bird. We talk about the donkey later. Tonight it'll be about the booby bird. It's a population of, it's mostly female population. It's a bird. It's a seacoast bird. Lives in the cold weather climate. It's a deep diver. Dives up to 90 feet. And the female has blue feet on, web feet. And the male diver has red deprived oxygen because he's feeding her and her offspring, and so he's given everything to this booby bird, which is damn near extinct. So that's about the bird, and now I can't wait. I want to get started on the donkey and how stubborn it was. And I brought you. It was an essay, man. It was my life's work. I talked about the donkey and how stubborn it was, the mule, retrograde, you know, and how stubborn it was. Well. You know, you got elephants on the corner, Pillow and Jones, which is a statement of its own, and then you got a statement right out here, a stubborn donkey in a briar patch, and you just carved 3 of them. Well, there's a story in Palestine that I promise you they had a troublesome pack of donkeys that bothered the village. They had to deal with the donkeys, so they hung the donkeys from the bridge. Took 3 donkeys. It wasn't 2, it wasn't the 1, but it was the 3rd. The 3rd, they all volunteered their time to bite and screech and kick. Horrible creatures. So this is a biblical proportion of the city council meetings that, you know, point out stubborn behavior. It's human behavior. You know, so I'll learn, and I'll be back here to share more about the Bible and the biblical ways of how I see it, okay? But the donkey needs to go, because the donkey's too stubborn to know what it's doing. It needs to learn its place. It's led, okay? The donkey's led, and then the elephant, he stampedes. He don't care what's next to him. He'll just push it over, uproot it, destroy it. Then they put the elephant down. You know, there's a lot of that going on. Save the elephant, man. Get out of its way. You know, but animal species, probably pretty important to study them. You know, you make everything out of an animal, you make it fly, you know. We like that, you know. It's technology. I admire it. I think it's wonderful. I hope I live long enough to see Elon Musk get to Mars. I don't doubt that he could get up there, but that's a lot of moving parts, but that's not my problem. I don't care. I'm more spiritually connected to this right here. Conservation and the birds and the bees, and you know, why don't you go do your job and do it well, because I can't stand somebody slacking. It's not a point man. That's somebody way back in the back lollygagging, man, needs to catch up. It's a community. What happened? I've been here. Some newspapers have dug out of my plumbing since 1947. Love to share them with you. They had a prominent attorney on the front of it. It's beautiful. Just everything so biblically, proportionately placed before me. I'm going to read this Bible. You will be my congregation for 4 minutes of my life. For the rest of it, I don't give a damn. Praise Jesus, God all Father. It's a spiritual war going on, man. I have the right to be in a community. Okay, I'll go on and on and on. It doesn't have to sound beautiful, does it? I don't care. I'll keep trying because I'm ignorant. That's what makes a Christian. Mr. Bruner? Yes, sir. So it makes a Christian a Christian. And I hope that you have one of these in your home. I'm sure you do. If you don't, maybe you should get one and read it. You'll see the donkey, the story about the donkey. It's in there. Wise old birds. There's a bird called Moloch. You heard of Moloch, the owl? He's referred to in Daniel 7, Ezekiel 18 through 20. They eat their own. First, they were sacrificing children. It wasn't good enough for them, so they sacrificed their own. Their best warriors. Yeah, you had enough? Have you? Good. Good. Good for you. Praise Jesus.
Thank you. If anybody else wishes to speak at this time, please step up to the podium. All right, we're going to move on to agenda number 3. And council, this is actually something that I'm very proud to sponsor. And thank you to staff for this recognition of this milestone. Council, what I'd recommend is that we go ahead and approve both proclamations. I know you haven't seen the proclamations, so I'm going to read them one at a time, starting with Sam's, and then going on to Carolyn's. So if we can have a motion to approve the proclamations, and then I'll read them one at a time, and we'll recognize both the employees for their service.
Motion to approve item number 3, proclamations recognizing Carolyn Meredith and Sam Cantu.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Well, I'm going to start with Sam's proclamation. And Sam, if you can remain seated until I finish, that way you're not standing up there awkwardly, and we'll, we'll do the same thing. All right, this is a proclamation by the Mayor and City Council of the City of Sunset Valley, Texas, recognizing Sam Cantu for his 20 years of service to the City of Sunset Valley. Whereas on April 4th, 2024, Sam Cantu celebrated 20 years of service to the City of Sunset Valley, and that achievement is significant. And whereas he has diligently served the community of Sunset Valley for 2 decades with exceptional dedication, integrity, and professionalism. And whereas he has held various roles within the Public Works and Environmental Services Department, showcasing his versatility, expertise, and commitment to serving the city. And whereas Sam was promoted to Parks and Grounds Superintendent in October 2023, and whereas Sam has distinguished himself as an extremely hardworking and dedicated public servant, going above and beyond his role to assist the residents of the city. Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed that we, the Mayor and the City of Sunset Valley City Council, do recognize Sam Cantu's 20th year work anniversary and join with the city staff, residents, and community members to extend our appreciation and gratitude to Sam for his 2 decades of exceptional dedication and contribution to the City of Sunset Valley. Sam, if you want to come up. Yeah, you want to stand and have council, take pictures, or you want to stand in front and take pictures? Whatever y'all.
That's always the way it is. Should we go there? Are we in the picture or no?
Sure, yeah.
Well, either we get out of the picture.
You stand by yourself, and then we'll take a picture. All right. Thank you again, Sam, and take care. Well, by great coincidence, we also have another 20-year anniversary in the same month of April that we're recognizing tonight. So this is a proclamation by the mayor and city council of the city of Sunset Valley, Texas, recognizing Carolyn Meredith for her 20 years of service to the city of Sunset Valley. Whereas on April 1st, 2024, Carolyn Meredith celebrated 20 years of service to the city of Sunset Valley, and that achievement is significant. And whereas Carolyn started as an environmental specialist with the Public Works Department in April of 2004, was promoted to Environmental Services Manager in 2007, and was appointed as the Director of Public Works in 2021. And whereas Carolyn has demonstrated exceptional dedication, expertise, and leadership in her roles with the city, and whereas Carolyn has been an invaluable asset to the Planning and Environmental Committee, to the city's parks, trails, and open spaces, and countless other projects, programs, and activities, and whereas Carolyn's contributions have significantly enriched the lives of residents and improved the quality of services provided by the city of Sunset Valley, now therefore be it proclaimed that we, the mayor and the city of Sunset Valley City Council, do recognize Carolyn Meredith's 20th year work anniversary and join with the city staff, residents, and community members to extend our appreciation and gratitude to Carolyn for her passion, integrity, and unwavering service that has left an indelible mark on the city of Sunset Valley. Carolyn.
Melissa?
Well, it's always a very happy occasion, and I'm glad that we can recognize staff for their excellent service, and hope that we have both Sam and Meredith or Carolyn for many years to come. And we have other staff to recognize over time as well with the city. All right, with that, council, we're going to move on to agenda number 4, which is council consideration of agenda items for approval on consent. Councilmember Rosengarten?
I move to approve on consent agenda items number 5, number 6, number 7, number 9, number 12, and number 13.
All right, so the motion is to approve on consent item number 5, 6, 7, 9, 12, and 13. And council, does anybody want to?
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
There was one more I missed. Number 10.
And number 10, we're actually going to have a presentation by the chair of, oh, sorry, that's number 11. Oh, number 10, my apologies. Yeah, number 10. I was looking at the wrong list. So number 10 is added to the list. All right, so council, the items are number 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, and 13.
Correct.
Does anybody want to take one of those items off the list? Mayor Pro Tem?
Item number 9.
All right, so we will strike item number 9 from that list. Any other items, council? All right, is there a second for the motion to approve on consent item number 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, and 13?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right, we approved on consent item number 5, the minutes from the April 2nd, 2024 regular meeting. Item number 6, approval of amendments to Financial Policies 103, general financial guidelines, and 301, accounts payable as recommended by the Budget and Finance Committee. Item number 7, approval of an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2023 through 2024 budget. Budget amendment number 6 for the Lovegrass Water Quality Pond Repair CIP project in the amount of $46,894. Item number 10, approval of a variance from the Sunset Valley Elementary PTA for a variance from sections 150.726B and 150.727A and C of the Land Development Code to allow for additional ground signage to advertise the 2024 Cheetah Fest to be held at Sunset Valley Elementary on Saturday, May 4th, 2024, and to allow a banner not attached to a building as well as a banner that is up for more than 30 days, and consideration to waive all associated fees for variance and sign application. Item number 12, award of a bid to Smith Contracting Company in the amount of $371,658.65 for construction of the Oakdale Brody Waterline and approval of an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2023 through 2024 budget amendment number 8, or at this point, we'll see if it's numbered correctly, for the project. Item number 13, approval of an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2023 through 2024 budget for allocating $139,000 for the final payment to Chasco Constructors Limited for the city facilities project pending approval of the modified WPAP permit for the pond. All right, so council, that will take us to item number 8, which is consider an act on approval of a $42,150.30 final payment to ServPro for mitigation of the damages to the City Hall in December 2022 and approval of an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget for the payment. And staff, if you want to go ahead and take an introduction to this, I know that council may have some questions about this item and how we want to proceed.
Yes, so, and Kyle is on vacation, although he did brief me on this item. We have been, not we actually, but our TML assigned insurance agent has been negotiating with ServPro for 16 months now, specifically on the mitigation. So let me pull up just this information. 16 months, yes. So I was going to pull up what I sent Councilmember Rosengarten earlier today, just so I'm sorry. So essentially, we did receive insurance money for the mitigation, but the mitigation total was around 120. The total invoice was $126,000 and some change. The city received about, I'd have to pull up 84,000, leaving the balance of 41,000. So we had 24,000 remaining from the insurance proceeds, and we went ahead and paid that amount. But this budget amendment would authorize the final payment to ServPro. And there's really no, the insurance agent and ServPro weren't able to come to any further agreement. This is the ServPro has knocked off what they were willing to knock off. We are getting a quick, if we go ahead and approve this tonight, we're saving $2,000, I believe, or $3,000 for a quick pay discount. But we could go back to TML after the payment is made, showing them the invoice, showing them all we had to pay out of pocket to see if we could try to get more reimbursement from TML.
So the reason I had this pulled so we could talk about it is because of that. It's the same, if you use an example of when you have hail damage on your roof. You hire a roofing company to come and look and do estimates. The insurance company comes and looks and does estimates. And then the insurance company will give you a certain amount up front, not the full amount, just a certain amount. You have to prove that you got the job done. You have to show the invoices of what the job was. You sent those invoices into the insurance company, then the insurance cuts another check for the balance. So this is mitigation. This is not anything to do with rebuilding the kitchen, et cetera. This is all mitigation. This is insurance. The reason we pay insurance. The insurance should reimburse us for this amount. And if their insurance company, the TML insurance estimator, says, no, ServPro is asking too much, it's taking advantage of the city, then they should tell ServPro, or ServPro should then come with more invoices showing more detail. I don't know how much more they can do, because that was quite detailed already. Maybe they need to go over it word by word, or how do I say it? Somehow they have to sell the insurance company that what they are invoicing is just. But we need to get back to the insurance company and ask them for payment. Can we do the same, and this would be for legal, if legal has ever come across this with another city, where they pay a claim and then get reimbursed for it, because you do that on your roof. Everybody who's had a roof and an insurance claim on it, that's exactly the process is.
Yeah, yeah, my recommendation would be we need to go ahead and pay ServPro, but then direct staff and Kyle to continue working with TML to try to get additional reimbursement for
Yep.
the mitigation. Because the city did receive full compensation for the reconstruction. We did pay extra out of pocket because we redesigned the kitchen, but we had already allocated funds to that even before the flood. So we were fully reimbursed for the reconstruction, which that invoice was around 142,000, but the 126,000 we only collected 84,000
140,000, yeah.
from TML.
Okay. So council, that is an option. I think, directing staff to continue to work with TML after we've, paid the final invoice, that's potentially where we can recoup some of the difference, or hopefully most of it. Councilor Rosengarten?
The contract is between the city and ServPro. It is not between the insurance company and the
Correct.
city. So we owe ServPro. I recommend and move that we pay ServPro the allotted amount, and that staff continue to work with TML and show them the invoices that we've paid for mitigation and get reimbursed.
All right, so there's a motion to approve payment, the final payment to ServPro for mitigation, and as part of that motion, directing staff to work with TML to seek additional reimbursement for the amount that we're paying out to ServPro, for the full amount that we're paying out to ServPro. Is there a second for that motion?
Second?
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right, so we approved the final payment as well as the budget amendment, and staff, I would like to make sure that we do bring this back with follow-up information as far as how
Yes.
the negotiations go with TML. And of course, I can work on that in the interim in terms of, how we can best proceed and if there's anything else that we can do to recoup the funding.
Redistribution, it's called, redistribution. So you have to go back to the insurance company, ask for redistribution, and then they cut you a second check. That's what it is.
All right. All right, so council will move on to agenda item number 9, which is consider an act on approval of a request for qualifications for lighting design consultants for the city. I'm going to go ahead and let staff do an introduction, and then we'll go back to council for questions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is a RFQ we're looking to release, asking for lighting design consultants for the city. So as you kind of may recall, through the Reimagine Birdie process, there was a lot of lighting discussion that was happening of changing the lighting along Birdie Lane, making something a little more customizable. We do have some lights in some areas from Austin Energy, but they only do one type of light. They don't do anything like bollards or anything of that nature. So we had looked at doing similar lighting along Home Depot Boulevard as we kind of look at that trail project as well. We had received some quotes for that project, and the Public Works Committee, after reviewing and discussing that, had recommended that we get additional bids for lighting design. However, lighting design is a professional service. We cannot just go and get bids like that. So what we're recommending is to use the RFQ process to secure services for the city of a lighting professional. This would be somebody who would be doing things by task order and projects as needed, depending on the projects that are approved by council. So, for example, if they were, if we're going to move forward with Home Depot Boulevard, it would be something like that, as long as they are also in line with what we're planning to do with Birdie Lane. So this is a RFQ that we would be releasing, looking for a qualified consultant to do lighting design, which is really technically mostly electrical engineering. None of our current consultants we don't have electrical engineers, we don't have, and MIN doesn't have an electrical engineer, Freeland Turk does not. So this would be trying to bring in that expertise for something that I think the city has considered important. This would be to the city would request the qualifications, and once we kind of review all those qualifications, the city can then negotiate pricing once the city has chosen an actual qualified applicant to be the consultant. So that's pretty much where we're at, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem, since you pulled this item, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Okay, couple questions here. One, so we had Arup and his company working with Mend on lighting on Brody Lane.
Right.
Is this work going to build on top of the work that's already been done?
Yes, it would be to work on top of the work that's already been done.
And is this going to be an open-ended contract, or are we going to hire like for specific parts of, or specific projects?
I would think that the person we would hire would be somebody who we would use for a variety of different projects over a number of years. It wouldn't be just for one project and then we do it again for the next project. It would be, they would be designing the lighting systems for the next few years that we'd be looking at replacing.
So, but it would be, when we pay them, would it be on a project-by-project basis?
When we paid, it would be project by project basis.
Okay.
Yes. Just like men, just like free, it's by project, by whatever council has chosen to do.
Okay,
So it would just be on a project by project basis.
okay.
They would be, it's basically as needed lighting design services. Yeah, it'd be task order based.
Councilmember Rosengart?
This would also include the infrastructure to see if it's even feasible for us to do a light in a certain location, et
Yes,
cetera.
yeah, they would do everything for that. They would be doing all the construction documents, specifications, and seeing the projects through from that kind of plan phase to through construction and actually implementation of the lights.
The only part that worries me is the minute you say design lights, that drives up the price. We could look for lights that already exist.
Well, it's not just the lights that already exist. It'd be designing the infrastructure that gets to those lights as well. So it's got that electrical component to it. That would be that design component.
Okay?
Other questions from council before opening up for members of the public? All right. Please go ahead and state your name and speak.
Thank you, Mayor Martha Gonzalez, 26 Reese, and also on the Public Works Committee. I am not speaking for the committee, but I am a member of the committee, and I want to give you my take on it. My take was that some of us were concerned, even though we really like the lighting engineer that we're working at, that the numbers were very high, exceptionally high. And one member said, we're paying for thoughts. And sometimes you do that, you know, and that was sort of my concern about my personal concern about the way we were moving forward on Brody with Home Depot, because I wanted to make sure we had the expensive thoughts paid for before we went to the implementation that we could perhaps do at a more affordable rate. Because sometimes your design, you want someone who says, oh yeah, this is your vision, and you'll pay a little more for that vision, but you don't necessarily want to be paying that top dollar for your installation. And so that's my take on how we got to this point, is that some of us felt like some of those numbers, once you pay for the big thought, you could install at a more reasonable cost. That's just my take. I'm not sure, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that would be fair, but we would, as I said, we have to do the RFQ process
Right, exactly.
to get there.
Yes, right, and that was the thing, so which is why the committee did officially recommend that we get more bids, because the numbers gave us pause, you know, that were coming in on the proposal. It was 79,000, it was 10%, you were looking at a $790,000 number for your project, if that was in fact what that was, which struck us as high. And so that's how we got to this place, just for context. I hope that my 2 cents is helpful that way. That we do pay for larger things for vision, that we get back to our more affordable way of implementation.
Thank you very much. Further questions for staff on this item? All right, does any council member feel like making a motion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, motion to approve a request for qualifications for lighting design consultants.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right. Council, we only have one agenda item remaining, which is going to be the presentation for the city's long-range financial plan from the ad hoc long-range financial planning committee. And I believe that Michael Francis was going to be here and joining us. Is he going to be
He
joining us?
unfortunately is not able to make it. He had
Okay.
I believe he had a work event. He did make a presentation, however, to the Budget and Finance Committee when they met on March 28th, I believe it was. And so I can
Yeah,
do a
if you
short
want,
presentation.
if you want to go start going through the presentation,
Sure.
and if the chair can join us during that, then we can get his comments as part of it. If he can't join, then I think we can rely on the presentation. put
Yeah.
together.
Well, yeah, he will not be able to.
Oh, I thought you said that he was going to be late
No,
later.
no,
Okay.
he's out of town. So
Understood.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yes,
so-
please go ahead.
Sure, sure. So, so this is the 2024 update. It has the city's long-range financial plan had not been updated since 2016. So it was time to update the plan, and I believe it was Mayor Pro Tem Young who sponsored that item that reformed an ad hoc committee. I believe in 2016, when the plan was updated, it was done by the Budget and Finance Committee, but in 2012, when the plan was created, it was by an ad hoc committee. So I'm grateful to the ad hoc committee and to Kyle, who had, was juggling multiple projects, which including the Tyler ERP conversion. So that's what really made this kind of a lengthy update, but very grateful to both him and the committee for working through this. So the plan begins with a project history and just some updates on, recent events, including the pandemic, update on reserve funds, capital expenditures. I believe the construction of the city facilities is discussed. And then the plan goes directly into the financial projections, as the previous two iterations of the plan had done. It begins with expenditures. One thing that was added was a description of the categories. So the committee recommended utilizing the same categories as the previous two plans to, make continuity. Also, just as a reminder to council, that this plan only analyzes the general fund. It doesn't look at numbers from other funds. And the only transfer that's included is the utility operational subsidy. So we specified that we were not talking about the infrastructure subsidy, that we were only talking about the operational subsidy, because it also doesn't include funding for projects, because as we know, those fluctuate from year to year depending on what funds are available and what projects need to be done. So we were really trying to key in on operational costs for the general fund. So there are expenditure projections. Another highlight is that the committee decided to use the actuals from FY23, since those were actual data, even though, the budget for FY24, the current fiscal year, looks different than those actual data. It was still better to start the plan using actual data as we projected out. And then the expenses increased by 3% in the various categories. One set of data that I thought was really interesting and wanted to call out in the plan, and the committee agreed, was that what we had was the 2016 financial plan had projections through our last fiscal year, FY23. And similarly, I believe those expenses increased by 3% every year. And so the operational expenses, based on the 2016 projections, were for the general fund were 5.68 million. In actuality, they were 4.72 million. So, operational expenses, and I think for a variety of reasons, have stayed down and haven't grown to what we were projecting in 2016. For revenue, we kind of give a little bit of a historical, and we show the city's revenues. As you can see, it dips in FY20, and then we have the big rebound. Although, as we're seeing this year, we're kind of flatlining, or actually our revenues are slightly under what they were for 23, last fiscal year. As in previous versions of the plan, we have different revenue scenarios. I believe the 2016 plan had only 4 revenue scenarios, and the 2024 update has 5 revenue scenarios of a 2% decrease, a no change, 2% increase, 4% increase, 6% increase. And there's the revenue projections. And then the chart overlays the revenue projections with the expenditure projections. And as you can see, even with the 2% decrease and a 3% annual increase in operating expenditures, they still don't match. So, you know, that's good news, but, you know, you have to keep in mind the general fund funds a lot of our projects, including our capital improvement projects for the utility fund, so the utility fund infrastructure. So I will discuss the recommendations. So in 2016, the recommendations, I believe, were exactly the same as 2012. Maybe they added one additional recommendation. For this updated plan, we only kept one of the recommendations from the previous 2 plans. So number 1 is review the long-range plan as part of the annual budget process. So now that we are meeting with council, has a preliminary budget presentation, and then kind of meets with the Budget and Finance Committee to kick off the budget planning process, we think that that is a good time to look to the long-range financial plan. Chair Michael Francis very wisely said, you know, if you try to look at this at the end of the budget after you've done so much work, it's hard to go back and, right? So it needs to be done at the beginning of the budget process so we can see where we are. And what we will do also, I forgot who it was, Councilmember Rosengarten on the Budget and Finance Committee, that suggested that we take this chart and start adding actuals to it, right? So when we review it next year, we'll add the actuals for FY24 so we can see where we are versus, you know, for the projection. So I thought that was a really helpful suggestion from the Budget and Finance Committee. All right, the second recommendation is reduce the percentage of sales tax that flows into the street fund while maintaining the current 2% local sales tax. I can go into the breakdown of the sales tax, but essentially, you know, we have an 8.25% sales tax in Sunset Valley. 6.25% of that goes to the state of Texas. We receive the 2% local sales tax. At one point, Sunset Valley had a smaller sales tax percent, but with the adoption of the crime control special purpose district tax, we are now getting the full amount of the 2% local sales tax. The recommendation of the long-range planning committee was to eventually reduce the amount of sales tax that flows into the street fund. Something to keep in mind, you know, we saw the numbers for the opinion of probable cost for Reimagine Brody. So that would be, you know, mostly street fund, utilizing street funds if council agrees to move forward with phases of that project. And it would take an election to reduce the percentage. And so council calls for the election, and at the time that council calls the election, that is when you can dictate what percent would flow into the street fund. The third recommendation was to reduce the number of funds. The city could explore reducing the number of funds in order to simplify the city's finances. So we currently have 9 funds. One fund that came up in discussion is, so we have a separate fund, I believe it's Fund 25, the number, yes, is the Drainage Utility Fund, which is a utility, right, that we charge to residents, to commercial customers, for drainage, for stormwater drainage. That is a utility, so my recommendation really is to have that as a department within the utility fund. So the utility fund currently has 3 departments. This would be the 4th. So it would only reduce the number of funds by 1, but you know, could be a start. I have asked legal of their opinion on that, they said to ask the city auditor. So the state code dictates that you have to keep separate accounting for each type of utility, but our accounting software does that, just like we do for the water department, for the wastewater department. This would be making the drainage utility as a department within the utility fund. So since we are in the wrapping up FY22 audit and then going to be engaging with a new auditor, I was going to wait and ask the new auditing firm what their opinion was on making the drainage utility a department within the utility fund. So number 4 is, this is the recommendation that has now been in all 3 versions of the plan, and this is also the recommendation that the Budget and Finance Committee, when they made their motion to recommend you all approve the plan, this is the one they wanted to highlight, I guess, or put a star by. It says, develop a policy to guide how reserve funds could be used. So currently, the city has a policy that dictates what the reserve fund for the general and utility fund must be. However, there's no policy that guides council on when, the reserve funds should be utilized, like what type of situation is appropriate to dip into those reserve funds. So this could be something that council directs the Budget and Finance Committee to work on, or this could be something where an ad hoc committee is formed to work on developing a reserve fund policy. And then finally, number 5, long-term maintenance and operating expenses should be modeled and accounted for when new CIP projects are considered. So when approving new projects, including parks and open space projects, council should work with staff and the consultants to account for long-term maintenance and operating expenses, such as staffing, that could potentially increase the city's overall operating expenses. So those were the 5 recommendations. Any questions or comments?
Councilor Rosinger?
So out of the fourth one,
Councilman.
out of the fourth one, develop a policy to guide how reserve funds could be used. My recommendation would be that we go back to 18 months of reserve. And we used to have 18 months of reserve because sales tax is something we can't always count on if there's retail centers that are vacant. And so if we went to 18 months, and that was the recommendation previously, that we go to 18 months because we solely rely so heavy on sales tax revenue. And the reason we went to 12 months is because Budget and Finance was tasked with finding the money to pay for the city facilities. So in order to find money, we then reduced to 12 months and used 6 months of reserves to help fund the city facilities. So my recommendation to council would be, number 1, 18 months on reserves for to be utilized. And then there's 2.5 million that is non-committed general fund. We could put at least $1 million of that into infrastructure under the utility fund, because we haven't put funds aside each year like we have in the past to make sure we had money for infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
I wanted to draw attention to a couple things here. One, the pie charts that Matt had put up earlier showing projected FY22.
Sorry.
Yes, that
There
one.
we go.
One thing I would draw your attention to is that when we talk about the utility operational subsidy, that is the 3rd largest category on our expenses. And you can see that as a percentage of the budget, it's grown from 13% to 20%, which I think just underscores what we've already been talking about, that we need to do something about utility operational expenses. Just one more data point in the need to do that. And then secondly, I wanted to say that, one, I like the idea of reducing the number of funds. Honestly, I question whether we need a separate CIP fund. And I somewhat also question whether we need a repair and replacement fund, when those things could both be in the general fund. And I think that's something council should consider and look at. And finally, I think the point that the ad hoc committee made for number 5 is we really do need to plan out what our long-term maintenance costs are going to be, especially with all our new projects. For example, with Reimagine Brody, that should be one of the things that we specify in any plan, in any project plan that we put forward. And where it's appropriate, we should mix these things into our long-term infrastructure planning.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from council? Councilor Johnson?
So the repair and replacement fund, we just created that like 2 years ago, right?
No.
The CIP was created a couple years ago, but
Yeah, it's been around a long time, but it really is a subset of the general fund. So it really does not need to be called out as a separate fund. It's just that's how the coding works, but really it is the general fund, repair and replacement fund. Which, yeah.
'Cause
So
I thought
we just need to fix that's can all be done in the back end of the accounting software, which now we actually will have asset, management, which we were seriously lacking. So, because there's also going to be equipment in the utility fund that's going to have to be replaced as well. So, once we start building our equipment in the accounting software and actually using asset management tracking, yeah, that is another fund that can go away. The repair and replacement funds will still need to be tracked, but they will be within the funds that they're, like, for example, police cars, public works vehicles, those are general fund expenses, and they'll be replaced in the general fund, but it doesn't need to be a separate fund. Exactly.
Yeah, so repair and replacement, I almost use it. I know that certain funds are called out because that's, you read it in the beginning of the, in the budget. It's like, this is how this was created and whatever. I always thought repair and replacement was more just like a policy and like less of a, but I guess it's more of a, like structurally it's different.
Right.
So, yeah, as long as we could, and the idea behind that, were you on council when we, and that one only started a couple years ago, I thought.
No, that it was extra money was allocated, right? It was like, oh, it was thought at the time, let's create a balance within the repair and replacement fund. But I think how it should be done is there's a repair and replacement schedule, right? And so you have, but also to that point is we always need to make sure we have funds. I think that transfer was made specifically about buildings, right? So making sure that we have funds set aside to, maintain the buildings, right, and to fix any wear and tear.
Yeah, my memory of it was just that, we would not replace things and then all of a sudden multiple things would fail at one time, and so we would have to put aside like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Instead, this is like, just go replace stuff on a timely, not when you're forced to do it.
Well, I think I go into it, but when there was the OpenGov, when we were transitioning accounting systems, I think, somehow that's schedule based. And then too, we had a lot of vehicles scheduled for replacement that we were ready, like there was a vehicle we wanted to replace in FY22. We didn't actually replace it till October, right? So, so again, it's all about the accounting, the accounting. And so with this new accounting software, working with Kyle, working with department heads to make sure that, for example, so if a police vehicle is due for replacement, say in FY25, we make those funds need to be allocated. We might not get that car till FY26, so it needs to carry over to. So again, it's all, it's all about the accounting. But there should be no need to have it go to a separate fund to pay for the replacement of that.
Yeah, you need a schedule.
You need a
for
schedule.
when these things need to happen,
You
so
need a
they can be
schedule.
budgeted for every year.
Right.
But it doesn't need to be a separate physical fund.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
other questions from council, comments? I certainly want to thank the ad hoc committee for their work and for staff for working with them as well and helping update our report, our long-range financial plan. And I agree that I think one of the things that is useful is going to be during the budget process at the beginning for us to use this as a guidepost for budget considerations. I would also probably comment or speculate that some of the recommendations based on the reduction in number of funds were, in the past few years, we've had a lot of challenge with that because they are actually separate accounts from a, bank account perspective that have now been consolidated too. So that added yet another layer of complexity for having so many funds, is that they were organized as separate bank accounts versus just one fund it's one taxable account that we're managing now. So I think that certainly reduces the complexity, or two, that reduces the complexity, but I think anything we can do to make it, easier for not only council, but for the public to understand our accounting is going to be a benefit for the city. I think the follow-up in terms of the street fund, the caution there is, of course, that we obviously want to help defund everybody taking on large projects. But I would be interested in exploring, what is possible within the tax code, right, in terms of, the city, could we make changes, and what would that entail as far as going to election, and votes for the public, so.
I believe the street fund is up for election next year, because it's a 4-year. So
Okay.
it'll just align perfectly. In 2021, that was both the crime control and the street fund up for reelection. And so
Is it this
street
year?
is 4 years.
Crime
No, so
control's
it's
5.
2025 and crime control's 5.
Okay.
So in November of 2025, the street tax will be on the ballot.
Okay, so maybe
And
something
so
that
in
council
June-
wants.
So in June, right, May or June, we call for that election, so
Yeah.
we can discuss it at that
Okay.
time.
Councilor Johnson?
I also, can you go back up to scenario 5?
Sure.
The
Sorry.
first chart, Edward Tufte is rolling in his grave. Your key here is completely backwards from what it should be.
Oh,
Good.
yeah.
You should reverse those.
Hey, Microsoft, that's Microsoft. But you're right, yeah, I should have.
Councilor Medicus?
So in item number 4, with the policy for the reserve,
Uh-huh.
is that something we want to ask the Long Range Planning Committee to look at, or should that go back to Budget and Finance for recommendation?
Well,
They're done.
yeah,
They're
they
Long range said
are,
we're done.
they are
Okay,
done.
all right. So then it would go to Budget and Finance, I
Yeah.
would imagine, but we're getting ready to go into budgets.
This would be
so-
something I would defer until after that.
Right, that's what I
Process
was
would be
gonna
something to take on for next year's
Next year.
committee. There might be some good starting points, I think, if we looked at other cities and how they have policies with regards to contingency or reserve funds, that might be a good starting point for us to bring to Budget and Finance for consideration.
Yep.
But I think that would be a project that they would take on
For 25.
for the 25 committee, yeah. And I like that idea too, because it, like Matt has said, it was something that was recommended in 2012, recommended in 2016, now recommended again in 2024, and having some guidelines that would be really helpful with regards to that. I also think, I mean, the 18-month consideration is applicable too, right? I understand the reason that we went to 12 months, at the time we were trying to free up money. Definitely want to hear opinions from Budget and Finance, and then let council weigh making the changes, but that used to be the policy, like you said, Councilor Rosengarten. Any other comments from council before I open up to the public? Councilor Rosengarten?
Whoops. Also on your graph, if you go back to your graph, I mentioned this to you before, but using the same colors from the top to the bottom really would help, because when you switch from the top, general fund revenue projections, then you come down to the bottom, and then all the colors don't correlate anymore. The
Yeah,
lines,
I think it's,
2% down,
yeah,
the colors don't match.
I think it's because the colors used here are used in these bars here. So yeah, I can go through and I'll just have to manually manipulate the colors.
Maybe Councilmember Johnson knows how to do
I
that.
can, I can do it. It's
Just tedious.
just tedious, yes.
Right now, I'll open up to members of the public that wish to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and Long Range Financial Plan Committee. That's a lot of work. I didn't get to sit in it as much as I wanted to because I kept meeting opposite of Public Works. So, so things that I would have said had I been there, and probably did the 1 or 2 times that I was. first I want to speak before I lose my train of thought on it. My memory, which could be hazy, was that the first time that we messed with the 18 months to 12 months was when Mayor Mills wanted to fund some streets. And there was some interesting things about that, because when we were doing the 18 months on some things, it was doubling other things. So it really mattered. And so we made some shifts during the Mills era, in my memory, to not have quite so much in reserve and what we were counting. And I think we need to pay attention to that so that we don't put things in what 18 months are that just sort of double things up and made the numbers higher. Then it was the second time when we wanted to fund the building, is my memory. But there was a second time that we messed with that, and I want to make sure that when we say 18 months, that we take back into that mindset that other discussion, so that we're not saving extra money every time we do something that we didn't necessarily want to do. I just thought it was a productive discussion back then, and I don't know that I can totally regurgitate it right now, but I think it's worth noting which things went into that bucket that we would then save money for. Then, the other thing that I thought was really important, so when we're doing the long-range financial plan, in my mind, it's how do we sort of track money, and how do we not run out of money? And I was one of the people who argued for things like the utilities and other things being included in this discussion instead of just the general fund, because that was where I thought we got into some trouble in recent years. Is the category of contractors in general. And I think that there needs to be a clear, transparent thing, because certainly I could not find it when I was on council, is to where people can basically push a vendor button and see how much money is going to the vendors. I do not feel like contractually we've had the amount of transparency that the public and the council deserves for where money flows. And so, for instance, engineering, you can't know, right? It can get coded. So you don't want, I think in the efforts of transparency, you want to be able to say, here's my vendor, here's how much money went out to my vendor, and then here are the subcategories for how that goes out. And it should just be as clear as anything else. But it was my experience that when I wanted to know, because it looked to me like we were overspending in some areas, I couldn't find it, and it wouldn't be given to me. And I just think that we should be clearer and cleaner about that, and that we won't have trouble if we are, because I think we've had some money that had to appear at various times because we didn't have that level of transparency, and so where things are being coded should be crystal clear. So that's and that's not exactly in this plan, but it should be somewhere. And I didn't blame them. They're really smart men, and they go, no, this is all I want to bite off, and I can appreciate that. But it's also good to look back as we say, okay, we're looking at our long-range financial plans. If we want to have money, then just sort of like when you were saying, well, we're losing 15% of our water, we should audit where that 15% goes. Then these are other places that I think we've had a little challenge with our money, and so at the same time, I think we should clean those up. So thank y'all for your consideration, and I think that everybody did really great work, and those were great policies. Thank you.
Thank you. And one comment that I have, just based on my own experience with the new Tyler software, the ERP software, I think that those kind of reports would be easier to generate in terms of being able to look at a specific vendor and look and get all the payments, all the aggregate information. And that may be useful for either council or budget and finance, to request those type of reports now that we have a software that's much more user-friendly in that regard, or capable of that. But that's, again, just based on my own experience. I defer to staff for the feasibility of doing that. But I having that kind of capability to look at a vendor and say, what payments have we made over the past year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever the consideration is. So, Councilor Rosengard?
Yes. First question is, are we done with the education process with the new software?
Yes. So we are not working with any implementation team. I mean, there's going to be issues that come up, right? But we're done with the actual implementation. So they did They were able to, Kyle worked with a special technician who was able to work on, behind the scenes to basically get the historical data to populate into the reports.
And with that, I know that as a business, government should probably do the same thing. You have to issue W-9s every January. That shows exactly what the vendors made every year prior. And so if you have to gather that information for your W-9s, you have that information already. So there is somewhere where there's a report that shows exactly what this vendor made and what we paid them.
I think that the reports just in Tyler, it's like the mayor said, to echo the mayor, it's a lot more user-friendly. The reports in MIP, they were just they were not good reports, right? And so, the vendor, it doesn't matter like where it's coded to, the vendor is gonna, if you pay this vendor, no matter what it's coded to, if it's a project code, if it's a, general fund code, general fund line item, it will pull up all of the payments made to that vendor. So
Okay, excellent.
already it's just so much, I'm not having to constantly bug Lori, say, hey, what,
You wanna
how
do a
much have we
happy
paid,
dance.
or what did we pay? I just, go into the system and, yeah, I can
You
either
can
look it
find
up by the general ledger or by vendor, so,
Great.
yeah. But, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is we're fully converted over for the payroll aspects as well.
Correct,
And,
yeah.
yes.
We are no longer using MIP. We are keeping it around because we're going to have to do the FY23 audit in MIP, but since that was the system we were using in FY23, so keeping MIP around until we're done with that FY23 audit.
Other comments on this agenda? Again, this is a presentation item. We can certainly carry forward council's comments to plan. Oh, go ahead.
It's
Oh, we're
the
actually
approval of the-
approving,
of
okay.
the update,
Yeah. So this would be, the action here would be approving the updated long-range financial plan, but also taking consideration council's feedback in terms of how we plan for recommending or directing committees to work on specific recommendations. Councilor Rosengarten?
I move to approve the long-range financial plan, and I ask that we send this back to Budget and Finance to review the 2024 recommendations and bring suggestions to council.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of approving the long-range financial plan as recommended by the Long-Range Financial Planning Ad Hoc Committee and the Budget and Finance Committee, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right. Thank you, council, for the consideration of this, and thanks, staff, again, for working with the ad hoc committee and also the ad hoc committee's work on this. And we will be seeing the recommendations brought back. Councilmember Rosengarten.
I want to do a shout out to the ad hoc committee, Michael Francis, Jose Flores, Justin Litchfield, and staff, Kyle and Matt. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the work you guys did. Oh, Richard Hayes, forgot, Richard Hayes was on it. Thank you, Richard.
And we'll expect them back in 2029? Is that all of them? All right, so council, we don't have any further business tonight, so if I can take a motion to
Motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right, we're adjourned at 7:09 PM.